Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the stage the founder of Mic Drop Media, Sam Ali.
Hey. Good morning, everyone. Salam alaikum. I'm not going to make you guys prove to me that you have energy. Like waking up my daughter in the morning, she's like, So that was a great conversation. Let's give it up for Cenk Uygur and Representative Khanna for being here. Thanks to them, a lot of amazing speakers going on. Everybody, so far, everybody had a good day one. Day two was awesome, great. Everybody, for the out of towners, everybody enjoying Dearborn, enjoying. See all that stuff they say online. They don't. Oh, thank you so much. I wish you guys would be here more often. But before we get to our next panel discussion, we do want to let everybody know the Biz Souk right across from the theater. Please go check it out. There's clothes. I can see a lot of people. How many people have went to the Biz Souk so far? Raise your hand. Everybody. Okay, excellent. There's some food, awesome food in there. We really, really want people to go in there and check it out, please. But don't be like my mom when she walks into JCPenney and she just walks around for 2 hours and comes out with nothing. She's just no, wrong size. Please make sure you help out these vendors. They are amazing. So let's get to our next panel discussion, which is titled Policy versus the People, Congress and the Erosion of Democracy. Well, since the start of Israel's genocide in Gaza, a wave of legislation has emerged across the United States aimed not at addressing the humanitarian crisis, but at criminalizing protest, silencing speech, and shielding U.S. complicity from public scrutiny. This panel will examine how lawmakers, rather than responding to the moral clarity of their constituents, have instead launched a legislative assault on civil liberties, campus activism, and Palestinian advocacy. What does this disconnect reveal about American democracy, and how can movements push back against policies that prioritize foreign interests over public will? And our speakers are, he is the co-founder and director of a new policy, Tariq Habash. He is an author and policy director at the Institute for Middle East Understanding, Josh Reubner. She is the executive director of CAIR's office on the San Francisco Bay Area, Zahra Billoo. And our moderator is a civil rights attorney and strategist. Please welcome Manar Wahid.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here this morning. I first actually want to say, I'm very honored to be here as a South Asian in a Arab space at ArabCon. It feels pretty meaningful for me to be here. I often feel more welcome in Arab spaces than in my South Asian spaces, but we won't talk about why that is. But I'm going to jump right in, because I know all of you here are policy wonks that want to know very deeply about policy. Let me start with, actually, Zahra, if you could kick us off. Why don't we talk a little bit about what we're experiencing right now in Congress at the state level. This didn't start on October 7th, 2 years ago. This started a long time ago, and I'd love to hear a little bit about how we got here, what the laws and policies are in our lifetimes that kind of built us towards this moment.
Good morning, assalamu alaikum. If I could see more of you with the way these lights are, I would ask which coffee shop you tried this morning. For those of you that heard me moderating yesterday, that's my obsession in Dearborn. I heard a couple of names, but we also don't, again, I said this yesterday, we don't want to start a turf war. So, go to one, go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one, and then go to the Biz Souk. Manar, my notes had me starting at the Patriot Act, and I know that's the conversation we had, but I had a moment yesterday reflecting on something that I've shared a lot with Arab and South Asian first, second, and third generation immigrants in the communities I've worked with. And it's that we start there often, particularly those of us in our 30s and 40s, in the immigrant parts of the Arab and Muslim communities. But when I think of our work and the context we're in now, it predates that, right? And there are, of course, major cases of Arabs, Muslims, and pro-Palestine activists being targeted, including, for example, the LA 8 who were targeted in Los Angeles decades ago for pro-Palestine advocacy. And it's important that we remember their names and their stories, but it's also key that we make the connection with how Black and brown communities have been treated for so long. And so I tell like one of my favorite stories of my early years at CAIR is when a young Arab man, second generation, walked into my office and he said, look, I found a tracking device on my car. And I still remember thinking, like, this is a prank. Like, there's no way you found, and back, like, the devices were this big. He looked under his car and he said, that's what I found. And I was like, there's no, what? And we sued the Department of Justice, but we actually at one point stayed our litigation because there was a case that had gone to the Supreme Court around the same time that the ACLU was leading on behalf of a Black man who had also realized that the government was surveilling him without a warrant. And so I start there because what they did to African American communities, what they did to Latino communities, that's where they started with us, right? And so now, 9/11. Wow, like that feels like a lifetime ago. But for those who are old enough, you may remember the chaos, the fear, our parents calling us and telling us to please stay indoors today, tomorrow, and then the wave of hate crimes. The first person killed in a post-9/11 hate crime, as many of us tell often, was a Sikh American. Because the people who would commit violence against someone who looks like me or any of us are also often so ignorant that they don't know the difference. And in the meanwhile, our elected officials, those charged with protecting and serving us, were moving the Patriot Act through the halls of Congress. Thousands and thousands of pages that had been written and ready. Like, this didn't get written after 9/11, it was written and ready. They voted on it without even reading it in most cases. And I remember that as a young activist being like, wait a second, you stripped us of our civil liberties in a way that had consequences for decades, and you didn't even read it. So what did it do? Well, to put it simply, you think surveillance started on October 7th, 2023? No. That's really when it grew. When agencies said, okay, we're going to start talking to each other, we're going to start sharing information. Warrant? What's a warrant? We don't need warrants. We're just going to get the information, secret letters, sneak and peek warrants. The most radical group I learned of post-9/11 was the librarians, because the government gave itself the ability to go and look at your library records. And librarians said, absolutely not. And that wasn't just words on paper. One of the most seminal cases of that era that I think we should all know about is the Holy Land Foundation, right? And what happened to the 5 co-founders of that incredible charity, the biggest Muslim charity in the United States in 2001. And now, it's 5 co-founders accused of supporting terrorism, when in fact all they did was support zakat committees that everyone else was supporting, had their homes raided, were dragged into court, were confronted by secret witnesses who they could not then cross-examine. Several were deported, and 2 of them, Ghassan El-Ashi and Shukri Abu Bakr, are serving effectively life sentences. These are incredible, generous, kind, beautiful men in their probably late 60s at this point, who still have decades to serve. And Democratic administration after Democratic administration has said, we don't care. And so this didn't start in 2023. It didn't even start in 2001. They have been building for decades to get us to this point where we have to say now, what can I say in public? What can I say in private? What can I even say out loud without worrying about the government knocking on my door?
Does anyone have anything they want to add? It's a very thorough history. I mean, it's funny. It's funny, not funny. I often say, like, I've never met a people more powerful than the Palestinian people, because we have built whole laws, bills. The Patriot Act, to your point, did not get written on 9/11. It was sitting in a drawer. They pulled it out. They passed it. And it is all built around Palestinian resistance, and that is where so many of our, what are called the material support for terrorism laws that Zahra was talking about. There are pieces of the Immigration Act, the Immigration and Nationality Act, that are just centered, they have been inserted from the Patriot Act, and it's all around Palestinian resistance. Never knew a people could be so powerful. And we've seen that again and again, right? So like for the last 10 years, we have seen bills introduced from the federal to the local level around things like at the federal level, the Combating BDS Act, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, and they're all to silence free speech that is related to Palestine.
Yeah. Can I take a
yeah,
point of
please.
privilege as the token Arab,
Yeah.
token Palestinian on the panel?
I don't think you're the token. I think we're the tokens.
In all seriousness, I mean, I think you're exactly right. This exceptionalization of Palestine in our speech, in our organizing, has happened over the course of decades, and it is something that I witnessed as a child, you know, in the aftermath of 9/11, the stifling of our communities from being able to even politically organize and engage. You know, this is something that goes back my entire life, and I know for many of the people in this room probably experienced before I was even born. And so this history is so important because now we're at a moment where technology is stronger and more powerful than ever. The ability to censor and repress how we communicate, how we organize, how we engage politically is so much more extreme, and yet we're also in a moment where there are so many opportunities for us to be able to build political power together as a community, and it's our obligation to do that, but we have been conditioned, we have been pressured to stay away from this work for so long because these systems have oppressed us here in the United States, like I said, for my entire life. And we have an obligation now, because we're seeing so many shifts in our public opinion, to actually re-engage politically. We don't have the luxury. Our people, our Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, they don't have the luxury of not being where they are and doing what they're doing. And so the fact that we are here in America, the center of power, the center of where these political problems continue to flourish, we have an obligation to engage politically, to be able to push back on this system that has created the circumstances that we're in today.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the why. I'd love to hear from you all about why you think lawmakers are so willing to give up our constitutional rights and their own. Why would they do that? Why are they so interested in silencing speech in this way? Maybe we could start with you, Josh.
Sure, thank you very much. Good morning, Dearborn. Look, you don't have to censor and repress speech that's not politically popular. The reason why we're seeing Congress trying to enact these laws to crack down on freedom of speech in support of Palestinian rights is because of the fact that it's never been more popular, the struggle for Palestinian freedom in the United States, than it is today. Now, look, AIPAC just spent a record-breaking amount of funds in the last election cycle to take out some of our champions who stood strong for Palestinian rights in Congress. Congressman Jamal Bowman of New York, Congresswoman Cori Bush of Missouri. Do you know, in the tens of millions of dollars of ads that they threw in to defeat these members of Congress, how many actually mentioned Israel? 0. Not a single ad mentioned Israel. So all of these voters who were bombarded by these negative ads attacking these progressive champions for Palestinian rights, these constituents had no idea that this was a pro-Israel outfit that was attacking them, because Israel was not mentioned once. Why is that? Israel is a losing electoral cause right now. We have never seen Israel and its supporters at a weaker point than we are today. And that is why I think we're seeing this crackdown on Palestinian rights take place in Congress. So let me give you a few examples of what I mean by us witnessing this huge momentum for Palestinian rights. And it's an utter shame that it's taken 2 years of horrific and horrendous genocide for these changes to take place. But the American people are horrified and outraged by what they're seeing daily on their smartphones as this genocide is live streamed to all of us. It's now the fact that 60% of all Americans want to end weapons to Israel. 60% of all Americans. And if you look at the changes on the Democratic side of the spectrum, the public opinion is even greater in terms of the momentum for Palestinian rights. Now, according to repeated public opinion polls, more than 3 out of 4 Democrats want to end weapons to Israel, and more than 3 out of 4 Democrats believe that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. This is why we're seeing members of Congress catching up with public opinion. And shout out to Congressman Ro Khanna for being one of the 52 members of Congress who are advocating to block the bombs to Israel right now. That is an indication that things are changing in Congress. That is the reason why we are seeing this increased crackdown, because the American people are with Palestinian rights. They're with Palestinian freedom. They're against continuing to arm Israel to commit genocide. Now, some politicians would want you to believe that only voters in Dearborn care about this issue, or that somehow concern about this issue is limited just to Michigan because of the demographics of the state. That's simply not true. After the election, we ran a public opinion poll, and we asked people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, who did not vote for Kamala Harris in 2024, why they did not vote for her. And do you know what the #1 answer was? Not the economy, not health care, not affordable housing, but Gaza was the #1 reason why Americans of all races, ethnicities, and age groups did not vote for Kamala Harris in 2024. So we're seeing how Congress is finally starting to catch up to public opinion. We now have Senator Bernie Sanders leading resolutions in the Senate to block the delivery of weapons to Israel, and now a majority of all Democrats in the Senate are voting to block weapons to Israel. Unprecedented. And in the House of Representatives, and I'll end here, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez of Illinois has introduced a historic bill to block Trump from sending Israel all of the types of weapons it's using to inflict genocide against Palestinians. As Congressman Khanna mentioned, 52 of his colleagues are now supporting that bill. How many of you have asked your member of Congress to support this bill? Raise your hands. All right, I'm gonna do a little organizing work here because that's what I am. I'm an organizer. Can somebody help me, please? I got stickers that say blockthebombs.org. I want all of you to get out your smartphones, go to this website, write your member of Congress right now, and demand that they support this bill. Thank you.
We love organizers.
I was curious if you were going to jump down.
I know, tough act to follow, but thoughts on the why?
I mean, who was here last night listening to Bassem's nihilism? So I found myself getting pulled kind of against what he was saying the entire night because I feel very deeply how frustrated we all are with our political system, that no matter what, they're giving us crumbs and they expect us just to take those crumbs. And I disagree ultimately with that reality that he painted, and not because, I don't love Bassem, we all love Bassem Youssef, but I think that it misses the opportunity that is in front of us, and I think Josh just painted it so clearly. Public opinion in America has shifted tremendously in a way that we have never seen before. I mean, we're talking about 8% of Democrats who are supportive of Israel in this, current climate, but you flip the numbers when you actually look at the voting record of our elected officials. And even if you had 100% of Democrats voting the right way on restricting weapons to Israel, if you had 100% of Democrats supporting a Palestinian state, it wouldn't happen because, let's be honest, Democrats are bad at politics. I'm not saying that just to be like facetious or funny, but the power that exists in our government, there are 535 members of Congress who have a real say in what happens in our policies, whether it's on healthcare, whether it's on, the Epstein files, whether it's on Gaza, and every single one of them needs to be approached in an organized way. We have to build political power. We have to engage with them very, very seriously, because that is what the other side, the pro-Israel, pro-genocide lobby, has been doing for decades, systematically. And I think one of the most powerful things that I heard yesterday actually came from someone who I really admire, Sister Linda Sarsour. And she challenged the crowd yesterday in a way that it really felt, I couldn't describe what was, was going through my heart at that time. But she said very plainly, are we doing enough? What are we doing to stop the genocide here in the United States as Americans? Are we doing enough as Arab? And I think we can all say, me included, we're not doing enough. There is always more that we can do. We can always do one more call. We can always find one more person to communicate with. We can always contribute a little bit more to the organizations that are doing this work, to the politicians that we need to defend, because Josh also mentioned this very clearly. AIPAC is spending record amounts of money to unseat our allies, to unseat our defenders, and we have to fight and protect them. We have to engage in our political system. That is a non-negotiable. But when we do that, we also have to understand, like Linda said yesterday, there are people who do this work every single day who have been doing it for years, for decades, and we need to be able to trust the professionals. We need to work with them. We need to be aligned as a community. And we have to understand that infrastructure matters here. Ro was talking about how PACs are bad. I agree, corporate PACs are really bad. I think that it is also increasingly incumbent that we understand what our campaign finance system looks like and how it works, and why, in order to be effective, it is not just enough to be winning in public opinion. It is not just enough to be winning on emails and on phone calls and on social media. We have to be winning in the halls of Congress. We have to be meeting with members every single day, and we have to make sure that they know when we are contributing to them, that when we are financially supporting them, that it isn't just because we gave through ActBlue and gave them a donation as a Democrat. Because, by the way, ActBlue is a PAC. I don't know if anyone knows this, but they are a PAC. And so we have to make sure that when we contribute, we are contributing with power, that we are signaling that our communities have power, and our communities are saying no to genocide. Our communities are saying yes to Palestinian freedom and Palestinian human rights. That's what we need to do. We have to build that infrastructure, and we have to work together every single day to continue to send that message. And there are organizations like mine, like A New Policy. If you don't know us, please, you should know us. Everyone in this room, everyone on the live stream should know about A New Policy. You should know about IMEU Policy Project. You should know about CAIR. You should know about Empower Change. You should know about the dozens of organizations that are doing really critical and important work for our communities. By the way, thank you, ADC, for all the great work that you do. Thank you for hosting us here at ArabCon. We all need to be communicating. We all need to be collaborating. We all need to be working together to achieve similar goals. That is what we are doing, and we all need your support. We all need your trust, and we all need you to work to be able to push through and change American politics forever.
Yes to everything that's been said. What is the emoji on WhatsApp, the app that we can't seem to boycott fast enough? It's that little 100. That's what I would do here. I want to note, yes to all of this. And the reason we need to do this is because what we have to overcome on the other side, the why. We are up against people who are driven by money and self-interest. Right? Zooming out of the Palestine conversation just momentarily, because it is all connected, is when we're doing civil liberties work and we're asking, right, like, why do people keep getting sent to jail? It's because someone gets richer every time someone is sent to jail. Why are undocumented people and even documented people being sent to private detention facilities? Because somebody is lining their pockets with that. And why are politicians continually disconnected from everything Tariq and Josh shared about where the population is? And yes, the numbers on the polls are moving in our favor, because despite all of the efforts towards repression, we are speaking up and we're saying, okay, like, what's the worst you can do to me? We're going to keep doing it. But why don't they listen? Well, because they have job security. That's what AIPAC provides. I have the privilege of claiming a few members of Congress as mine based on where I live and how I travel, and so I'm really proud that Congressman Reubner represents the district that the CAIR office I run is in. But sometimes I spend my time in Southern California with Brad Sherman. For those of you that know anything about Brad Sherman, wow, AIPAC has bought that seat and him, and he doesn't care. Every opportunity to make an anti-Palestinian remark, and he does it. Like, he doesn't miss anything. Pick up the phone, call his staff. I actually don't know that his staff agree with him on everything, but job security. And so that why is something that I think we really have to be honest with ourselves about, is when are we going to be real about rewarding and punishing people? We talk the talk, but are we donating, right? Are we donating through the organizations and infrastructures that we've built? Or are we out here talking trash on Instagram about, oh, I don't like this thing or I don't like that thing? No, get to work, because Brad Sherman is unfazed, right? And all of these other members of Congress that are not moving, as well as our law enforcement agencies, our police chiefs, everyone opening detention facilities in our communities, they are doing it because the other side has said, don't worry about the polls. Those folks don't show up. Those folks don't donate. What did Hazami say yesterday? They protest on a Saturday in Arabic when nobody is listening outside of an empty building. And I am here for that. Like, you will find me at those things, but that can't be the beginning and end of our work. We have to reward and punish people. There need to be real consequences for our elected officials and their staff members, right? For our local governments, for our school districts, for anyone that says that they claim to represent the populace. If they're not voting the way they're supposed to, if they're not signing the legislation they're supposed to, and if they're not budgeting the way they're supposed to, let's send them home.
Can I add in on that?
Yeah, please.
Fully agree with what Zahra just said, but just pushing back a little gently on Congressman Brad Sherman, because I don't believe that AIPAC's paid for his seat. I believe that he is a dyed-in-the-wool, true ideologue Zionist who would be advocating for Israel and his anti-Palestinian racism, even if he never got a cent from AIPAC. But here's the good news. I think that the number of members of Congress who are actually ideologically Zionist is very, very few. In fact, I could probably count them on maybe 2 or 3 hands. The vast majority of members of Congress who are towing the line and who are going with the flow of the pro-Israel, pro-genocide lobby are there for the money, are there because they're afraid of losing their seats. But here, too, the dynamic is starting to change. And I want to point out the fact that Congresswoman Valerie Foushee of North Carolina recently renounced AIPAC money and signed on to block the bombs. Now, why is this significant? AIPAC actually spent heavily in her race to elect her against a candidate who supported Palestinian rights. She owed her seats to AIPAC, and now she turned around and renounced them. Is it because she had a moral change of heart? Maybe. Is it because the North Carolina Democratic Party passed a resolution saying ban the bombs to Israel? Maybe. Is she looking at the polls that we're commissioning, saying that you are going to lose your seat if you keep advocating for Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people? Maybe. It's probably a combination of all of these things. And this is not an isolated example. Just the other day, Congresswoman Maxine Dexter of Portland, Oregon, also signed on to block the bombs. Why is that significant? AIPAC Super PAC dumped $1 million into another Super PAC in the last election cycle, this one advocating for science, nothing to do at all with foreign policy. They dumped $1 million into the science Super PAC to elect Congresswoman Dexter to office. Now she too has signed on to this historic bill calling for weapons to be halted to Israel. So amongst those vast majority of members of Congress who are in it for the money and who, because they mistakenly believe they have to toe the AIPAC line to keep their seat, things are changing dramatically. And if we work smart and hard, we're going to flip things dramatically in the midterms and in the 2028 election for sure.
I'm loving your positive energy, Josh. But I'm a lawyer, so I like to do risk. So we're going to do a little bit of risk, I think. I'd love to hear, Tariq, from you, actually, about, so you were in the Biden administration at the Department of Education. You were the first political appointee to publicly resign. Can you speak a little bit? Over, to be clear, over Israel-Palestine. That was the rationale. Can you speak a little bit about, like, what you, and that is the reason that you created a new policy, right? To build a different foreign policy around Israel-Palestine. Can you speak a little bit about what you've seen at the federal level and what we're seeing now as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, everyone, for your support. And a year ago, I teased a new policy at ArabCon for the first time publicly because I felt like this was one of the most important places to talk about the political realities that we faced in the United States in this moment during genocide that we are facilitating. And I had to work alongside people who designed the policies that our government was enacting. And that was something that, you know, I will have to live with the rest of my life. But I promised myself I would never not speak out and make sure that the people who were responsible for that reality, that my people were continuing to be massacred and systematically starved and bombed, that they would always be held accountable. And this week, one of those individuals wrote an op-ed in Politico saying that now is probably the time to withhold weapons from Israel. And I think that's great that he finally came to the realization after so many months of having the power to actually push those policies inside the White House and then choose not to leverage his influence, his role to be able to do that, and wait until now without taking responsibility for that reality. I just felt like, one, to Josh's point, the Overton window has shifted so drastically that now it is going to be a stain on your career, and you have to whitewash your role in facilitating that genocide, and that's a good thing. But it is also really important for all of us that we make sure that people like Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken and John Feiner do not ever have opportunities to go back into government again because they can't be trusted. So I just want to say that to start. But what I learned in government is that political power matters, political influence matters. And in a world where there was a willingness to actually engage on issues that we had never seen politicians engage on, canceling student loans, fixing a system that was discriminating against Black and brown people from having access to high quality education and affordable education, and seeing those systems work for real people. I knew that government could do things to actually help communities. And when it came to actually stopping genocide, when it came to withholding weapons from a country that was violating our own laws, it wasn't that we didn't know what to do. We always knew what to do. But there was no political will to actually prevent it from happening. And so the reason that I started a new policy, along with my colleague Josh Paul, who resigned from the State Department a few weeks before I did, the reason that we started is because we needed that political muscle in Washington, D.C., to be in the halls of Congress every single day, meeting with elected officials and talking about how our policies as a United States government were undermining not just the safety and security of Palestinian lives, which is extremely important to me as a Palestinian American, but they were undermining our own values as Americans of freedom, values that we purport to have of justice and equal rights. What we are enabling and what we have enabled in terms of an occupation and apartheid and now genocide against the Palestinian people undermine those values of who we are as Americans. And they undermine ultimately our own national interests, our security as Americans. And this is really important messaging. It's really important to be able to communicate with elected officials who purport to care about these things. They say, like, I am here to represent my community and my district. And you know what? A lot of them, they're going to vote on issues that they don't care about because they have a lot of things that they have to do in Congress. And it's unfortunate that a lot of these people don't necessarily care about Palestinian lives, but we have to find levers to be able to influence them because this is how politics works. And we have to be able to resonate with them and their staff and say, your job is now at risk. If you don't care about Palestinian lives, we know you still care about your job. We know you care about these other things. And that is on the line now because all of your constituents, regardless of if they're Arab or Muslim or Palestinian or white or black, it doesn't matter who they are. They're watching you sacrifice real lives, children's lives, doctors' lives, because it is politically convenient for you. Now it's inconvenient for you. And if we are building that type of infrastructure to push back, we can stop it from happening. And what we're seeing now in Congress is, in part, a good sign. But to be clear, we're also seeing some really dangerous signs in Congress, too, because as we are watching AIPAC and the pro-Israel lobby start to lose control of their grasp on political power, they are lashing out. And we are seeing pieces of legislation every single day coming into Congress, trying to take away your passports if you support Palestine, trying to pass a national anti-BDS legislation that we've already seen in 38 states around the country. We're seeing probably now a dozen different types of anti-Semitism awareness acts where they are trying to conflate criticism of the Israeli government with anti-Semitism, trying to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, undermining your First Amendment rights. They are taking steps every single day to make sure they can fast-track even more weapons to Israel because they know that that window is closing. There's a bill in Congress right now called the Bunker Buster Act of 2025, where they are literally trying to give Israel 30,000-pound bombs, huge bombs that you literally cannot carry on normal warplanes. You have to have access to B-2 bombers, U.S. classified bombers that no other state in the world has access to. And that law not only gives them those weapons, but it also gives them access to our warplanes that are the only ones that can carry those, so they can use them at will. These are the stakes that we're up against, and we need to be aware of every single piece of legislation, every single amendment that is coming, that they're going to try to attach to a budget resolution, to a continuing resolution when they're keeping the government open or closed in the next couple weeks. State Auth just had a huge hearing where for 36 hours they were just voting on amendment after amendment after amendment. They're coming up on the National Defense Authorization Act. These are must-pass pieces of legislation that come up every single year. NDAA has over 1,000 amendments. Our legislative research team has reviewed every single one of them. It took us over 2.5 days to review over 1,000 amendments and provide recommendations to members of Congress about what those legislative agenda items do and what they don't do and why they're dangerous. We have to be in the room. We have to be doing that work. We need everyone to be engaged on this stuff. So if you are talking to your member of Congress, that's amazing. Come to us, ask us where your member is. We'll help you, because that's what we want to do. We want to arm you with the resources, with the knowledge, with the power, so that when you go in, you're not just saying, hey, sign on to block the bombs. They may have already signed on to it, which is great. There's a bunch of other stuff they can do too, and they should be doing every single one of those. That's the infrastructure that we need every single day in Washington, D.C., because that's what it takes to be able to fight back against the pro-Israel lobby and what they have built over decades.
For anyone that doesn't know how that type of bill works with the NDAA, what Tariq is talking about is that his team is working 24 hours for 48 to 72 hours as they're dropping amendments. These members don't read them, they don't vote on them, and so organizations like A New Policy have to spend all of their time truly up all night reviewing them, sending in vote recommendations. It's really incredible and also thankless work. Nobody knows that it happens, and we're very grateful to you all for doing it.
Check out our legislative tracker. It's on our website, anewpolicy.org/legislative-tracker, I think.
That you haven't memorized is impressive. I want to say the thing that I keep hearing from all of you is infrastructure. And I think it's a really key point because we have not built our own infrastructure. Where is our bill that's ready to go when the moment is right? What are we socializing for the things that we want for ourselves, for our children, for our country? What are the affirmative things that we're building? Because as Zahra said, the Patriot Act didn't get written on 9/11. It got pulled out of a drawer and it got used. And these bills that they're proposing now that Tariq is talking about, they don't think they're going to try to pass parts of them through these overnight bills and amendments, but they're not trying to pass their whole bill today. They are trying to normalize their bill over time so that when the moment comes, people remember it and then they just vote for it. And that is how we lose our rights, because we don't have the infrastructure and the long game to really push back on that. And I also want to say the bills that you're talking about the changing the definition of anti-Semitism, those have been happening for a decade now. Yeah. They've been waiting for a moment where they can move the bills that silence speech against Palestinian resistance. That is what they are centered on. And to the point that they are happening at the state and local level, I'm wondering, Zahra, if you can speak a little bit about what you're seeing in California in terms of legislation, the different things that are being proposed, what is new and what's coming.
Thank you, Manar. And quick note on Brad Sherman. I concede. He's an ideologue. He's also well paid.
He doesn't deserve this much airtime. It's fine.
Fair, but I want to acknowledge that there are people who are paid, and then there are people who are believers. Mm-hmm. And the believers are few and far apart. Yep. And so we have to be able to distinguish that, and he is both. One other thing about the Patriot Act that I think is worth saying, and maybe is implied, but when they succeed and the crisis passes, right, or the political moment passes, they don't restore our rights. So everything we lost in 2001, we don't really have it back. So what we lose now it's not now we got the Palestinian state, or in fact, inshallah, we got the one-state solution and Palestinian liberation, and then they rolled back the BDS regulations. No, whatever passes now stays in place, and we have to keep that in mind when we're fighting. Now at the state level.
And
yes.
will be weaponized, as the Patriot Act and the Holy Land case are being weaponized right now against nonprofits, likely like the one sitting before you on this stage in a matter of time. Again, centered on Palestinian organizations to start.
And the people we lose will stay behind bars, right? So who does deserve airtime is Ghassan Alashi, is Shukri Abu Bakr. They are still behind bars. They're grandparents now, right? And there are people in their periphery like Marwan Maroof who are facing consequences decades later. At the state level, Tariq mentioned 38 anti-BDS bills. And where we can fight them, we have won. But it is like playing whack-a-mole. Mm-hmm. And something that an elder said to me a couple of weeks ago is, we have to be prepared for the unpredictable. And so that's what I've been sharing with my team, is that we think that there is a playbook, and they've thrown out the playbook. This elder, she said that a playbook is useless unless it's 1,000 pages long, and you're willing to pull it right out of the middle. So that's what we saw in California this year. Assembly Bill 1468 was initially introduced by members of the Jewish Legislative Caucus, attempting to weaponize allegations of anti-Semitism in order to restrict how ethnic studies is taught in California public schools. It was rushed through the legislature. They canceled hearings, they rescheduled hearings, unanimous votes, and then a day before a major vote, they pulled the bill. We thought, well, that's interesting. Gutted and amended another bill, so now it's everything that you want under AB 715. It's like, wait, what? You changed the bill number? You canceled the vote? And you're all just acting like this is normal, and we're just showing up predictably to advocate against the first bill, not even knowing that they've moved it to the second. And so AB 715 would severely restrict how ethnic studies is taught in California. We're proud to have a graduation requirement in California that requires learn about ethnic studies if you want to graduate from a public high school here, except not about Palestine. And not about anything anyone who cares about Israel would find offensive. And the state said, let's appoint an anti-Semitism coordinator. Nothing for anyone else, just one anti-Semitism coordinator. And let's make it really easy for just anyone to complain about a public school teacher who says something I don't like. I can complain anonymously. I can complain and I'm not even at their school. And so one of the things that we were talking about beforehand is like how Canary Mission has been weaponized in the context of targeting immigrants. Right, so a teacher ends up on Canary Mission.
I think people know, but just in case.
Oh,
Canary
sorry,
Mission.
yes.
For the people on the live stream,
Canary Mission is the biggest and best Arab and Muslim dating site. No, I'm joking.
I'll check it out. Thank you for that.
If you want to check the politics of a prospect, look on Canary Mission. Canary Mission is a massive website that is now more than a decade old, that has targeted many of us who have ever said anything about Palestine. They will find every internet quote about you, they will find your best and worst picture, and then they will call a prospective employer. And they will call a prospective graduate school admissions officer, right? And among the things we know about the members of our community who have been targeted by ICE is that some of them have had in common that they've been targeted by sites like Canary Mission. Now, as Canary Mission grows, and really no one has been able to stop it, we're finding teachers ending up on there, high school students ending up on there, right? And so bills like AB 715 make it possible for somebody sitting on the internet in another community to be like, oh yeah, let me file a complaint against this teacher. It's moved through the Assembly, it's moved through the Senate, and it's not the only bill that we're fighting in California. I like to brag that California is the best of all the states. I know that's really offensive to say in a place like Michigan, the only other state I would move to. But it is being driven by capital D Democrats, is something else that we need to keep in mind. The members of the Jewish Legislative Caucus in California are good on other things, like housing and homelessness and immigration. But they're really bad on this, and they're unapologetically bad on this. They are threatening other members of the legislature. They're attempting to undermine other progressive legislation in California, all to move AB 715 forward. So it has passed in the Assembly, it has passed in the Senate. Tens of thousands of California residents, and by the way, every major educational institution. We watched that Senate Education Committee in California, the California Faculty Association, the California Teachers Association, the California Superintendents, all of them said, this bill is bad, we don't want it. And the members of the Senate Education Committee voted nonetheless to move it forward. And even our friends abstained because there's too much on the line for them to vote no. And so it moved through the Education Committee against every voice in education in California said, don't do this, this is bad, this will impact students, this will impact teachers. By the way, it's a waste of money. Who's gonna pay for the anti-Semitism coordinator, and how are you not going to end up with many, many lawsuits because all of us are gonna say, well, I want a coordinator, you want a coordinator, you want a, like, right, we all want a coordinator. It is now on the governor's desk. He could sign it, he should veto it. And all of you, Californian or otherwise, should call him. Because we all know he wants to run for higher office. It's called Assembly Bill 715. Call Governor Gavin Newsom, tell him that he should veto it. That if he is truly a champion of free speech, if he is truly as anti-Trump as he claims to be, and if he truly really wants all of us to support him in his pursuit of higher office, he will do the right thing. What we worry about is that what happens in California may set the tone, or is already setting the tone for everywhere else.
Yeah, please.
I really appreciate Manar's question about the need to think strategically and have infrastructure and a long-term game plan and have that 1,000-page bill ready to go when the time is right. And I don't want to telegraph it because we are on live stream and I don't know who all is watching it, but there are those plans in place. But we can analogize the situation to apartheid South Africa and how that was dealt with in this country. Look, apartheid South Africa became a pariah state in this country and throughout the world, and I think if you look at the case of Israel today, the same thing is rapidly becoming the case. How many of you all saw the war criminal Netanyahu's address to the UNGA yesterday? I know you're not clapping for his speech, but I know you're clapping because everyone walked out. And what better symbol of Israel's global pariah status is there than that, speaking to an empty hall of the UN? So, as I mentioned at the outset of my remarks, public opinion is rapidly changing in this country so that Israel is also becoming a global pariah in this country. And if we look at the history of the anti-apartheid movement in this country, we saw how when South African apartheid became such a pariah, then finally, again, the politicians are always the last one to get it. No offense to Representative Khanna, because he's not the last one to get it. But for most of the politicians, they're always the last one to get it. And they're responding to public opinion. And that's what happened in the case of apartheid South Africa. Look, South Africa was our strategic ally in Southern Africa for many, many decades of the Cold War, in the same way that many politicians posit that Israel is the strategic ally of the United States in the Middle East today. But lo and behold, South Africa became ostracized, turned into a pariah state in the international arena. You had growing civil society movements for boycotting, divestment, and sanctioning South Africa. That is the model for the Palestinian struggle. Explicitly, if you read the BDS call, it's modeled on the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And so what that did in the United States was that it forced what at first was a very lonely effort by a few courageous, brave, progressive members of Congress to put forward a bill for comprehensive sanctions on apartheid South Africa. And when that was first introduced, it was only a handful of members of Congress who supported it. But eventually it became the law of the land. And even when President Reagan vetoed that bill, Congress still gathered up the votes to override that veto and impose comprehensive sanctions on apartheid South Africa. Now, I believe that it's rapidly becoming the case that we are going to get to the point where we have a bill in Congress for comprehensive sanctions on the apartheid state of Israel, and that we are going to win that battle.
Okay, I know we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to do one dark thing, and then I'm going to do something positive. I swear we'll walk out of here with something positive. What is the thing that is, and I mean this on the policy front, so I know there's a lot more to say here, but what is the thing on the policy front that is keeping you up at night? I know.
There's so many.
Well, yeah.
I'll go with one. I think the failure of the opposition party, which right now is the Democratic Party, from being able to mobilize against a growing authoritarian threat of this increased federalized police force. They weren't able to prevent the big, beautiful bill, which just injected tens of billions of dollars more into ICE annually. And living in Washington, D.C., I get to literally look on the map before I leave my house to figure out, hey, is my normal route to the office or to this place or to that meeting going to put me in the middle of a literal checkpoint in the same way that my family in the West Bank have to go through checkpoints where the IDF holds machine guns in their face? Or do I need to go a different route today? Because that inability to push back against these authoritarian powers that we're seeing, that unwillingness to see the through line from Palestine to what is happening in the United States today is going to put us in a situation where, from a policy perspective, we won't have the ability to be able to organize and to push back. And that's why it's so important that we are all invested every single day in ensuring that that doesn't happen. That means we have to build partnerships and alliances across other issues, because Palestine is the cutting edge issue of so many other things, whether it is immigration, increased police retaliation and aggression against our communities, environmental issues, public health issues, economic issues. Palestine is all of those in one. And so we have to be able to communicate with people who care about these other issues, regardless of if they are prioritizing fighting for Palestinian rights. Because if we don't fight for Palestinian rights, if we don't fight for an end to the occupation and the genocide, if we don't fight against authoritarian fascism here in the United States, it is going to make it impossible for us to do this work politically moving forward.
So many things. Who sleeps at night? What is this question? It is, for me, the way in which all of everything Tariq described is also moving at the local level. Because as we work quickly to build infrastructure or resource infrastructure that exists, it's at the city level, it's at the county level, it's at the state level, and folks are barely keeping up. And what passes or moves or is tolerated in one place spreads. Like what Tariq described started with first when ICE descended in Los Angeles, right? And now DC, and now all of these other places. And so it's that whack-a-mole nature of what's coming next and where, while anyone who bravely attempts to challenge it in any way is also asking the question of, how do I protect myself? How do I protect my loved ones? And those of us that don't get snatched up are wondering who around us will get snatched up next.
I don't have anything to add.
Nobody's clapping for people being snatched up, just to be clear.
We're also not clapping for the UN address yesterday.
Ditto what my co-panelist said. Couldn't say it better.
Just moderator's privilege. I'm just going to add to the list of dark, since dark is clearly my thing. The university and colleges piece keeps me up at night, because our young people should not live in a world where they cannot explore, learn. Like, that is not the college experience I have. Even make mistakes. We should be able to do that as young people, to figure out who we are and what we believe in. And the way that these kids are not just being silenced, but being punished for potentially their entire lives is devastating to me. But also, never seen a braver movement than the kids on these campuses. I was like, my generation did not have that in us. We were raised to stay in line most of the time. Not these guys. These guys don't stay in line. Okay, last question, says I see that our time is up. There are good things happening. I've actually heard them from all of you at this point, but can you give people one thing to walk away with that they can do? Many of us feel powerless. We stay up at night in our beds feeling like looking at whatever social media outlet and feeling terrible. What is something that people can do that has meaning? It can be something that has immediate impact or not, but like, what can people do on the policy front?
They can keep doing. Tariq quoted Linda and saying, are we doing enough? There's always one more phone call to make. In California this week, we've been urging people to call Governor Gavin Newsom, and people are calling every day. There's this like, well, I did it. No, you could do it again. You can email again. You can choose where you spend your money. And you can lift other people up who are doing this work. You heard about a lot of organizations on this stage. Some of us work for them. We reference them. Support them, right? So put your money where your mouth is. Do you love Palestine more than the other side loves apartheid? Do you love Palestine more than the other side cares about its self-interest? I believe you do. And so make the phone call, send the email, and then put your money where your mouth is.
I'll be really quick, but I'm going to ask the audience a question first. How many of you donated to a political campaign in 2024? Raise your hand. A decent number of you. How many of you did it and it went to a candidate that had no shot of winning? Raise your hand. Okay, so I think what I'm seeing is that we are giving to people because they're aligned, and I think that's really important. But if we want to build real power, we need to make sure that we are also supporting people who have the capacity, the capability, the infrastructure to be successful. And I'm not saying that you have to do all of the vetting on your own, because like Linda said yesterday, there are experts who are doing this work every single day to try and help you understand who is out there who can do this work. And I also want to be clear, just because Zahra started at 1% does not mean that we should not have supported him, because look at where he is now. He is about to be the mayor of the most important city in the United States, and that is huge. So we need to be supporting people who are aligned, who have values, who are authentic, who are genuine people, and who care about making this country and their communities better places. But trust experts. Trust the people who are doing the work. And on our PAC's website, we are going to be announcing candidates who we are supporting because they are aligned on values and because we have interviewed them, we have talked to their team, and we know that they have the infrastructure, and you can give directly through a new policy PAC's conduit page. And so one thing that I am telling everyone is give through infrastructure that gives our communities more power. That is the most important thing that we can do to send a message to every single politician, every single elected member of Congress, every single candidate for federal office, that we are here, we're not going away, we are going to stay engaged, and we are going to take power back, and we're going to change American politics forever.
I feel like I know what you're going to say, but go for it.
I mean, in this time of fascism and authoritarianism and white supremacy and the dismantlement of the rule of law, it's very dangerous times, to just be like a complete understatement. And the Trump administration and the president himself, bully. The Israel lobby, bully. You don't back down to a bully. If you back down to a bully, they're only going to give you more. And so what we have to do is stand up to the bullies who are trying to silence us. And everyone has their own lane. Everyone has their own avenue to make an impact, whether it's writing letters or going to a demonstration or holding meetings or making donations. All of these things matter. Keep on doing it. Don't be intimidated, because if you give a bully an inch, they'll take a mile.
Thank you all. Let's give a big round of applause to our panelists, not just for being here, but for the work they do every day.